The wine glass was still half full when she left. She didn't even pretend she wasn't coming back late. She took off her wedding ring without a word, placed it beside the microwave like it was a hair tie or a receipt, and walked out wearing those silver earrings she hadn't touched since our honeymoon in Santa Fe. The air in the house shifted when the door clicked shut. I don't know what kind of man just sits there while his wife goes to a party hosted by the man who once took her to Italy for New Year's and still calls her Malbert. But I guess I'm that kind of man. I didn't follow her. I didn't call. I just stood there, watching the wine, waiting for it to evaporate or explain something. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't break plates or punch pillows like they do in movies. I just walked into our bedroom, turned off the light, and lay on my back staring at the ceiling fan. And I kept thinking about the letter. 2 weeks ago, I found it. Not hidden, just folded. Tucked in her knitting basket, of all places. A handwritten note in blue ink. For closure, she wrote at the top. Except it wasn't closure. It was a spark she'd kept dry for years, waiting for a windy day. She never sent it. But she didn't destroy it either. And now she was there. With him. I got out of bed. I wasn't planning to do anything dramatic. I wasn't even thinking. My hands just moved. I opened the hallway closet, pulled down the green lockbox we kept old USB drives in, and connected the one marked Valkyrie 13. It was never a vacation drive. I knew that. Inside were voice memos. Dozens. Not from her. From him. Some of them were 2 seconds long. Some much longer. I only needed to hear 5 seconds. 5 seconds, and the skin on my arms turned to ash. He called her his wife. And she laughed. At exactly 4:02 a.m., the garage door opened. She didn't expect the hallway lights to be on. She didn't expect me to be sitting in the kitchen. She didn't expect the laptop. She saw the paused voice memo on the screen. She saw the wine glass. She looked at me and whispered, "You weren't supposed to hear that." But I didn't say a word. I just pointed at the chair across from me. Because I had one question. Only one. And once she answered it, I knew what I had to do. She sat down like she was lowering herself into ice water. Not with guilt, with calculation. There wasn't a single word of apology in her mouth. Not a flicker of panic in her voice. Just silence, like she was waiting to see how much I already knew. Like she had a playbook for this moment. The chair creaked under her, but she didn't move. Just sat perfectly still in that dress, with glitter under her eyes, a lipstick smudge on her wrist, and the faintest trace of someone else's cologne clinging to her jacket. Not mine. I didn't yell. I didn't flinch. I simply asked, "How long?" She tilted her head, blinked slowly. "Everett, just tell me how long." She licked her lips. "That doesn't matter." That's when I knew the answer. I turned the laptop screen toward her. Pressed play. If I close my eyes, I can still feel you beside me that night. That's how I know you're not really his. You never were. The voice filled the room like steam in a locked shower. Calm. Intimate. Her expression didn't change, but she reached into her purse and pulled out her phone like it was some kind of shield. She tapped the screen once, twice, and then set it on the table between us. The screen flashed. Audio recording started. I stared at it. "Are you serious right now?" "If you're going to interrogate me," she said, "I want a record of it." That moment broke something in me I didn't know could break. Not because she cheated. Not even because she recorded it. But because she'd been ready for this. Like she'd been rehearsing it all in her head. Like I was just a formality, a line item she had to cross off. And then, as if the universe decided to twist the knife just a little more, she said something I'll never forget. Something I didn't even know a person could say with a straight face. She said, "You should be thanking me. You never would have grown without this." I laughed. A dry, hollow, broken laugh. Not because it was funny, but because the absurdity of that sentence cracked me like a frozen pipe. She sat there, blinking. Still calm. Still composed. So I stood up, walked to the closet, pulled out the small cardboard box I'd hidden 3 days earlier behind the winter coats. I placed it on the table. She stared at it. "What is that?" "Proof," I said. "Of what?" I slid the lid open. Inside were 6 envelopes. Numbered. Labeled. Dated. Each one contained a photo. Each one from a different source. I hadn't planned to use them. I really hadn't. I thought maybe if she just came clean, we could start again. I would have forgiven her. I was prepared to be pathetic. But she wanted war. And she didn't know I'd already won. Because in envelope 3, the one marked January, Cassette Club, there was a picture. Not grainy. Not blurry. A full resolution, time-stamped photo of her and Grant. Not kissing, not touching, just looking. Looking at each other the way people look when they don't have to pretend. The way she hadn't looked at me in years. She reached for the envelope. I didn't let her touch it. I made 6 copies, I said. 3 digital, 3 hard. One's already with someone else. Her breath hitched. That was the first real emotion I saw. Not remorse, fear. She sat back down. Slower this time. And for the first time since she walked in, she looked smaller. Like the version of her I married had finally returned, but just to say goodbye. She opened her mouth and then shut it again. Good. I didn't want words. I wanted action, and I was already planning mine. We didn't speak for 42 hours after that night. I counted. Not because I was waiting for her to apologize. I'd given up on that by sunrise. But because every hour of her silence felt strategic, deliberate, like she was testing how long it would take before I'd break and ask, "Are we okay?" I didn't ask. On the second evening, she came down wearing sweatpants and one of my college t-shirts, as if slipping into something nostalgic would make her look less like a stranger. She stood in the kitchen doorway sipping peppermint tea like nothing had happened, like the silence hadn't been soaked in betrayal. "I want to talk," she said, calmly, like a therapist. I didn't look up. "You had your chance. This time's different." And it was. Because she didn't ask for forgiveness. She asked for terms. We sat at the dining table. The same table where we used to host couples game nights and pass around bowls of guacamole like our marriage was something worth envying. Now it felt like a negotiation desk. She placed her phone between us again, not to record this time, but to show me something. A document. A shared Google Doc titled, "Recalibration Plan, 30 Days. I swear to you, I almost laughed. She had bullet points, rules, deadlines, even bolded headers like, "Emotional Reset Period. Transparency Protocol. Mutual Respect Clause." She had written a contract for how we were supposed to navigate the emotional turbulence of her cheating. And I just sat there, staring at it. Not angry, not hurt, just numb. Like she had killed something in me and was now offering a tax refund. "You're insane," I whispered. She didn't flinch. "This is what healing looks like." But I saw through it. This wasn't healing. This was optics. This was her building a paper trail to make herself look balanced if things ever exploded. She wasn't planning to fix anything. She was setting the stage for a graceful exit. Still, I said yes. I agreed to every line. Because what she didn't know was that I had started my own document. Not digital, not traceable. A leather notebook, locked in the bottom drawer of my desk, under the fake floorboard I installed when we first moved in, just in case I ever needed a place for things I didn't want found. I wasn't planning revenge. I'm not that brave. But I was planning clarity. Truth. A final mosaic of all the pieces she'd been hiding behind lip gloss and iced coffee and false apologies. So I played along. We spent the next 5 days acting like a normal couple going through an experimental reset. We cooked together, slept in the same bed, even watched an old comedy special we used to love, though neither of us laughed. At one point, she reached over and put her head on my shoulder. I froze. That's when I realized something terrifying. I wasn't mad anymore. I was curious, not about what she did. I had the pictures, the timeline, the voice memos. I wanted to know why she picked now. Why this man? Why this party? Why she walked out that night wearing her wedding ring and came back without it. And then, on day 6 of the agreement, I found something. Something she hadn't written. Something no Google Doc could explain away. It was inside the lining of her coat. A folded slip of paper, torn from a spiral notebook. No date, no name, just 4 handwritten words. "When he's asleep, call." No punctuation, no context, no signature. But I knew exactly what it meant. And I knew exactly when she planned to use it. It happened 3 nights after we agreed to the recalibration plan. I had left the porch light on, like always. A small ritual of stability, I guess. Something consistent to distract from the shifting tectonics of our marriage. She was in the shower, not the master bathroom, but the guest one down the hall. She always said the water pressure was better there, but I knew the real reason. She didn't want me hearing her cry anymore, or talk, or hum. But that night, something changed. When she came out, her footsteps were careful, not tired, not casual, careful. She paused outside our bedroom, phone in hand. I could feel her watching me from the doorway, even with my eyes shut. My breathing was slow and steady. Too steady. She thought I was asleep. She crept out, down the stairs. No creaking floorboards. She knew which ones to avoid. I waited. 27 seconds. Then I slipped out of bed, barefoot, careful not to rustle the covers. I moved like I did back in high school when I used to sneak downstairs for leftover cake at 3 a.m. Slow, focused, guilty. From the hallway, I could see her silhouette in the kitchen. One hand on the counter, the other holding the phone to her ear. She didn't speak for the first 10 seconds. She just listened. And then she whispered, "He suspects nothing." That hit harder than anything I'd heard on those voice memos. Because this was now. This wasn't memory. This wasn't nostalgia or rekindled what-ifs. This was present tense treachery. Then she said something else. "The documents are still in the envelope. I haven't touched them." "No, I'm not stupid. If I bring it up now, he'll smell it." "No, not yet. He's too calm. That's the problem." I pressed my back to the wall. I wasn't breathing. I felt like a spy in my own home. Like if I made one sound, the whole ceiling would collapse on both of us. Then she said, "I'm not sure if he'll go through with it. He doesn't have the spine." My stomach twisted. She wasn't afraid of me. She was betting on me doing nothing. That's what she meant by recalibration. Not healing. Not rebuilding. She was watching me like a test subject, waiting to see how much betrayal I could absorb before breaking. She ended the call. Quietly. Put the phone in the fruit bowl, like it was some casual object she didn't want me to see buzzing in her pocket. Then she poured herself a glass of water and stood there. Still. I turned, silently walked back to the bedroom, got into bed, and faced the wall. When she came back up, she didn't even hesitate. She slipped under the covers, her back to mine. We didn't touch. We didn't speak. But I wasn't asleep. And she was no longer pretending she cared. The next morning, everything was bright. She made pancakes, played music in the kitchen, wore a cardigan I hadn't seen in years, a light blue one I once said brought out her eyes. She was glowing. And it terrified me. Because people don't glow unless they believe they've already won. That's when I made the decision. I drove to a quiet office supply store on the edge of town. Bought a binder. 5 dividers. 2 packs of plastic sleeves. Nothing digital. Nothing traceable. I printed everything. The photos. The memo transcripts. Screenshots of her phone backup, synced from her cloud account 2 months ago when she forgot I still had admin access. Then I added my own notes. Timestamps. Behavioral changes. Code names. Emotional spikes. Lies. Tone shifts. I was writing the story she didn't know I was watching. She had her plan. But I had mine. And if she wanted to play chess, fine. But she forgot something. Even pawns can become queens if they survive the board. It was supposed to be a quiet Wednesday. The kind of day where nothing shifts, nothing breaks. Just a filler episode between real moments. I was folding laundry in the living room when the doorbell rang. 3 short chimes. No knock. She was upstairs, on a work call, as usual. I opened the door expecting a package or a neighbor returning misdelivered mail. Instead, there stood a man I'd never seen, but who somehow knew everything about me. Late 30s. Lean. Calm in a way that wasn't natural. Like he trained himself to be still. Dark jeans, gray jacket, no smile. His eyes flicked past me, toward the staircase behind my shoulder. "Everett Granger?" "Yes." "I won't take long." He handed me a thin manila folder. No return address. No seal. Just my name written in black ink. Then he said something I still don't fully understand. She wasn't supposed to send it. I blinked. "What?" He glanced over his shoulder like someone might be watching. "You'll understand. Probably too much." And then he left. No car in the driveway. No footsteps. Just gone. I stood there for a full minute before closing the door. The folder was light, almost weightless, but the moment I held it, my hands started to shake. I hadn't even opened it yet, and already I knew. This wasn't from her. This was about her. Inside, 12 color photos. A flash drive. A receipt from a hotel we'd never stayed at. And a single handwritten note. No greeting, just words. "Look closer. Not at the lies, but at the patterns. You're not the first. You won't be the last. But you might be the only one who kept receipts." The photos weren't romantic. Not directly. They were subtle, careful. Her laughing across a cafe table. Her handing something to a man outside an office building. A man I didn't recognize. At first. Until I looked at the hotel receipt again. The guest listed wasn't her. It was Angela L. Mahoney. But that wasn't a stranger. That was her maiden name. a name she hadn't used in over 9 years. And that's when the hair on my arm stood up, because I suddenly remembered a strange moment, months ago, when a junk mail letter arrived with that same name. She tossed it into the trash with too much urgency. I hadn't thought about it since. Until now. I went to the garage, pulled down the storage bin where we kept old tax forms, and found a box I hadn't opened since we moved into the house. Buried inside were documents, statements, and to my horror, an active credit card account under the name Angela L. Mahoney. Recent charges, flights, dinners, a boutique hotel in Charleston, a gym membership in another city. I checked the last statement. The authorized user on the account? Grant Holleran. She never removed him. Not from her financials. Not from her orbit. Not from her life. He had been there all along, hiding in her second name like a splinter in skin. And suddenly everything made sense. The invitation. The party. The dress she bought with cash that didn't show on our statements. She didn't reconnect with him that night. She'd never disconnected in the first place. That evening, I didn't confront her. I cooked dinner, set the table, poured her wine. She smiled like none of it had happened. And I smiled back. But I wasn't angry anymore. I was awake. Because now I realized something terrifying. I wasn't just dealing with a disloyal wife. I was living with someone who maintained an entirely separate identity, an alternate reality that ran parallel to mine. And if she was capable of that, what else had she been hiding in plain sight? By midnight, I couldn't sleep. Again, she had gone to bed hours earlier, brushing her teeth in silence, climbing under the covers like a woman whose conscience was spotless. She didn't notice the difference in the way I looked at her. Or maybe she did, and didn't care anymore. The manila folder was tucked inside my desk, buried beneath insurance papers and a warranty for a microwave we don't even use. But it wasn't the pictures that haunted me. It was the flash drive. I hadn't plugged it in yet. It sat on my nightstand like it was humming, like it had a pulse. I couldn't stop staring at it. At 1:43 a.m., I got up, took the drive, and went downstairs to the office. I didn't even turn on the lights. Just the desk lamp. Just enough to see what I was doing, not enough to feel safe. The flash drive had a single file on it. A password-protected zip folder. Name, AMH_residue. I tried our anniversary date. Her high school mascot. Her dog's name. Nothing worked. Then I remembered the name on the hotel bill. Angela L. Mahoney. And then I remembered a conversation from years ago when she once told me, in passing, that her parents had actually celebrated her birthday 2 days after the real one because of some weird hospital mistake. I typed in the original birth date. September 14th, 1987. Access granted. My stomach turned. Inside the folder were 5 audio recordings and a document called Ledger Notes. Each audio file was titled only by a month and a year. No names. No context. The most recent was from 4 months ago, recorded on what I realized was the day after I'd had a panic attack in our bathroom, and she'd brought me soup like a doting spouse. That recording started with 2 glasses clinking. Then his voice. He doesn't know, does he? Her reply, no. He's sweet, but so easy to mislead. Laughter. His, then hers. Then a pause. Then him again. You sure he won't do anything irrational? And her voice, cool and quiet. Everett doesn't do irrational. He disappears into his own guilt before he ever gets angry. I closed the file. My hands were trembling. I opened the next one. A recording from last December. This one was different. She was crying. Not sobbing, but controlled, breathy. And the words she said next, they'll live in my chest forever. He thinks I'm someone I'm not. That's not love. That's projection. Then a man's voice. Then stop playing the character. I can't. Not yet. He's still useful. Useful. I pushed my chair back so fast it nearly tipped. I paced the office until I could breathe again. And then, against every instinct in my body, I opened the final file. May_2019. Wave. That was before her new job. Before her health kick. Before all the distance. We were still laughing back then. Or so I thought. The recording was short. He still doesn't know about the apartment in Morriston. He won't. You sure the lease is airtight? Signed it under Mahoney. Utility bills go to AP. Oh. Box. He'll never see it. Morriston. A town 2 hours north. She once told me her company's retreat had been there. It wasn't a lie. It just wasn't the full truth. She'd had a second life this whole time. And now I knew the address. By 3:11 a.m., I was behind the wheel. The roads were empty. Cold. Streetlights flickering like they weren't sure if they should help me or look away. My hands gripped the steering wheel like it might fly off the column if I didn't anchor it. I found the building easily. A low-rise apartment complex with numbered mailboxes and gated parking. I didn't need to break in. I still remembered how she picked locks. She'd learned as a kid from her uncle, something she'd bragged about once while drunk and laughing. She never knew I'd practiced. The lock clicked open in under 40 seconds. Inside was a studio apartment. Sparse. No photos. No clutter. But it wasn't empty. There was a painting above the bed. Not something she'd buy, but something he would. I'd seen his style in social media tags and gallery posts. He loved muted abstracts, shapes that didn't mean anything unless you already knew the story behind them. And then I saw it. On the counter, next to a bag of almonds and a half-full bottle of wine. My handwriting. A card I had written her for our 5th anniversary. She kept it here. In her second life. Not at home. Here. Like a trophy. Like evidence. And suddenly, I wasn't confused anymore. I was calm. Because now I knew something she didn't. She didn't cheat because she was unhappy. She cheated because she needed a version of me she could control, even in secret. She carried me into her betrayal like a charm she couldn't let go of. She didn't want to leave me. She wanted to own both lives. But that ends now. The next morning, I made her breakfast. Eggs. Toast. Her favorite jam. The expensive one she always forgets we already have 3 jars of. She came down in her robe, pretending to yawn like she hadn't slept soundly through a night I'd spent in a hidden apartment staring at a version of her I no longer recognized. She sat at the table and smiled. This is sweet. I just nodded. Felt like cooking. She took a bite and said nothing for a while. I watched her chew, sip coffee, scroll on her phone. I watched her the way a detective watches a suspect. Not for what they do, but for what they avoid doing. She never asked where I'd been. Not once. That confirmed what I already knew. She was counting on me never finding out. She wasn't worried because, to her, I was still the same old Everett. Too cautious, too passive, too dependent on the fantasy of who I thought she was. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. That night, I started a new project. She thought I was writing again, some hobby novel I used to toy with in my 20s. That's what I let her think. But what I was actually doing was something far more dangerous than revenge. I was documenting. Every lie, every discrepancy, every choice she made that didn't align with the story she was still trying to sell me. I wrote it all down. Not for the police, not for a lawyer, not even for closure. I did it because truth, when organized and sharpened, becomes a weapon. And I was almost ready to use it. On day 9 of our recalibration, she asked if I wanted to go out to dinner. It was spontaneous, which she knew I hated, but maybe that was the point. To catch me off guard. To throw in just enough affection to make me second-guess the mountain of evidence stacked in a binder under our guest bed. Sure, I said. Sounds nice. We went to a new place. Trendy. Loud. She wore the green dress I told her once made her look like spring. That was 2 years ago, during a weekend in the Catskills. Back when I believed she only smiled like that for me. Over dinner, she laughed more than usual. Reached across the table. Even touched my hand once. It felt like a performance. Like she was rehearsing for a version of this relationship she hoped I still believed in. I played along. But halfway through dessert, I excused myself and walked out the back door. Not to leave. To take a call. It was from him. I'd found Grant's number. Pulled it from the metadata on one of the voice memos she didn't scrub correctly. I didn't threaten him. I didn't yell. I simply said, "You don't know her the way you think you do." Silence. Then, after a moment, his voice. "What do you want?" "Nothing," I said. "You're not the target. You're bluffing." "Am I?" I ended the call. Not because I had nothing else to say, but because I had everything to say, and I wanted him to stew in the silence. Because a man who doesn't yell is a man you should fear. A man who doesn't need to make threats is one who already knows the outcome. When I returned to the table, she was pretending to scroll through Yelp reviews. I sat down and smiled. "Everything okay?" "Yeah," she said. "You?" "Perfect." We drove home in silence, and for the first time in months, it wasn't awkward. It was strategic, because she thought she was holding the final card. But what she didn't know was that I had mailed 6 copies of the binder. One to my brother, one to my lawyer friend in Chicago, one to a P.O. box registered under a name she doesn't know I own. The other 3? Their insurance, just in case things get messy. She's been writing fiction behind my back for years. I just decided to publish the truth first. I waited 3 more days. Not because I was unsure or because I had doubts, but because I wanted to give her every chance to tell the truth before the clock ran out. I gave her silence and space. I gave her kindness she didn't earn. I even gave her the illusion of peace. But she never said a word. She kept pretending, kept wearing the robe she thought I liked, kept playing happy couple in front of our friends, kept laughing at my jokes like she hadn't already packed up parts of her life into a parallel reality. That's what finally broke it for me. Not the affair, not the secret apartment, not the recordings. It was the ease with which she could lie to my face, even when she didn't have to anymore. On the morning of the 12th day, I laid everything out on the dining table. The binder, the photos, the flash drive, a copy of the lease agreement in her maiden name. Her words, typed and highlighted. Every whisper, every laugh, every knife she slid between my ribs while smiling sweetly. And on top of all of it, a letter. Not to her, to myself. It was titled For the Version of Me Who Forgot What He Deserved. She came downstairs at 8:07 a.m., hair wet, coffee in hand, still acting. She froze when she saw the table. At first, I thought she might cry, or scream, or beg, but she just stood there. "I see," she finally said. "I hope you do." She stared at the evidence like it was a mirror, and maybe, for the first time, it was. Then she asked, "So what now? You ruin me?" I looked at her for a long time, and then I shook my head. "No, I don't need to ruin you. You did that all on your own." I didn't expose her. I didn't burn her life down. I didn't post anything. I didn't even send the binder to her job, though I easily could have. Instead, I handed her a signed separation agreement. Quiet, clean, no drama. Just boundaries. A timeline. A way out. She didn't fight it. She didn't even argue. She just signed. We didn't hug. We didn't cry. We just parted like 2 actors leaving a stage after the curtain call, no longer pretending to be characters we'd stopped believing in years ago. That was 6 months ago. Since then, I've moved to a smaller place by the lake. It's quiet, peaceful. My mornings are simple. Coffee, walks, a journal I actually use now. I started writing again. Real writing, not just mental survival logs. And I'm dating someone new. Slowly, carefully. No illusions, just honesty. She knows everything, and somehow, she didn't run. More importantly, I didn't run either. Because I've finally learned that silence doesn't equal strength, and peace doesn't come from pretending. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away before the wreckage buries you. And sometimes, the most beautiful revenge is living well.